Hello terrarium lovers, this is part one of my very short video series talking all about the different elements of terrariums, so therefore you can go away and make your own, knowing everything about each little element that's needed to create one. I'm starting today by talking about the vessel itself, which is a fairly important decision because it ultimately affects the kind of plants that you can put in your terrarium and what kind of look you're aiming for. To keep it very simple, there are two different types, open and closed, and this is something I get asked about all the time, is what kind of plants go in what type of vessel. I've got examples of each here, so I'm going to start by talking about the open terrarium. This type of terrarium is really popular at the moment. You've probably seen them for sale in various different shops. They're sort of a geometric style with panels of glass in them and then one open side. So you can see there's a big open front which has no way of being closed off. Now these guys you can basically treat as a plant pot. You can put any kind of plant in here because they have this big open area. You could fill it with soil, pop in your normal house plants if you wanted to, or you could fill it with something lighter like sand and then use it for cacti and succulents. I've got a few little examples here and you can see the smaller ones fit really well on the inside of the glass, especially once you've unpotted them into whichever substrate you'll use, and I'll talk about substrate in another video. So cacti and succulents are perfect for this style of terrarium, mainly because they love to have air circulating around them. They like to be in a nice dry environment. You think of where they grow in the wild, for example, it's always very arid, deserty regions, and so this type of terrarium is perfect for them because they can still get lots of light, they're open to the elements, and they can keep nice and dry because this kind of terrarium does not create its own water. Any plant you put in this will need to be watered, whether it's a little bit of spray for your cacti and succulents, or if you put a normal house plant in here, you'll need to water it regularly. That's one of the biggest problems with cacti and succulents in general, is people overwater them. So this kind of terrarium, just be aware that if you do water it, very, very little if you're watering cacti and succulents. The other style of terrarium is obviously a closed terrarium. This is a really good example. Again, these vessels are really popular at the moment and they do look lovely when they're filled with plants. It's a really big, fully enclosed glass jar with a cork lid. Another good example of a closed terrarium, got one just down here, is the demijohn. They're much harder to make because obviously they have such a small opening at the top. However, these are both classed as closed terrariums because once that lid is on, there is no way any air, water or anything else is going to get inside. And this is what makes them brilliant for houseplants that love moisture, because they create their own environment inside the glass. The substrate you put in will naturally already have water inside it. That water evaporates, condensates on the glass. You can actually see this one's got a little bit of condensation in it at the moment. The condensation then drips down the inside of the glass, which then waters the plant. So there's constant moisture in here. You don't need to water them. If you notice they are dry, obviously you can add a little bit of water, but generally they look after themselves. And for that reason, plants that love humidity thrive really well in these guys. So for example, ferns, Fittonia, ivy, hypostes, Tradescantia, I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not 100% sure, and various other moisture loving plants will thrive really, really well in here. But the most important thing is you do not put cacti or succulents in these because of the moisture issue. They will not survive. They will hate being in here. So that's the main difference really between the open and the closed, is that these guys are perfect for cacti and succulents, or, you know, normal houseplants can go in there as well, but you will need to water them. This one cannot have cacti and succulents in it, but most other plants will survive, particularly ones that love moisture, and you will not need to water this because it would pretty much look after itself. Now, one last little thing that you may be thinking of adding to a terrarium is moss, because moss makes a fantastic addition to a terrarium. However, bear in mind, again, the fact that if it's in here, great, because moss loves damp and moisture, humidity, and this is what these closed terrariums provide. However, if you put moss in an open terrarium, you will have to keep it watered, you'll have to keep it moist the whole time, which is not going to work if you put it in with cacti and succulents because they like to be dry. I hope that kind of makes sense and clears it up a little bit, the difference between open and closed terrariums and the type of plants that you can put inside each. Obviously, there's always exceptions to the rule. This is it's never going to be exactly right, but as a general overview, that is how the different types of terrariums work and what plants work really well inside them. I hope that helps a little bit. In the next video, I'm going to talk about everything we're putting inside the terrarium, so starting with the bottom layer, and then each video from there will go on. So we've built up the whole terrarium. Thank you for listening. And any questions, fire away. And yeah, like I said, I hope you found this a little bit useful. Thanks for watching and I'll see you again soon. Bye. By the way, if any of you are wondering why I'm not in my studio, it's because the fucking sun was so bright through the window I couldn't film, so I've come indoors.